Praise the Lord, my beautiful, blessed souls. This is Bruised and Not Broken. I am here back with another video. I would like to go over, Leviticus chapter 11. Let's get started. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, say to the Israelites, of all the animals that live on the land, these are the ones you may eat. You may eat any animal that has a divided hoof and that chews the cud. There are some that only chew the cud or only have a divided hoof, but you must not eat them. The camel, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is ceremonial unclean for you. The hyrax, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is unclean for you. The rabbit, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is unclean for you. The pig, though it has a divided hoof, does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat, touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. All of the creatures living in the water of the seas and the streams you may eat, any that have fins and scales. But the creatures in the seas or the streams that do not have fins and scales, whether among all the swarming things or among all the living creatures in the water, you are to regard as unclean. And since you are to regard them as unclean, you must not eat their meat. You must regard their carcasses as unclean. Anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales is to be regarded as unclean by you. These are the birds you are to regard as unclean and not eat because they are unclean: the eagle, the vulture, and the black vulture, the red kite and any kind of black kite, any kind of raven, the horned owl and the screeched owl, the gull and any hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be regarded as unclean by you. There are, however, some flying insects that walk on all fours that you may eat, those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Of those you may eat any kind of locust, katyd, cricket, or grasshopper, but all the other flying insects that have 4 legs are regarded as unclean. You will not eat them. You will make yourself unclean by these. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up one of their carcasses must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean until evening. Every animal that does not have a divided hoof or that does not chew the cud is unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them will be unclean. Of all the animals that walk on all fours, those that walk on their paws are unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcasses will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up their carcasses must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean till evening. These animals are unclean for you. Of the animals that move along the ground, these are the unclean for you: the weasel, the rat, and any kind of great lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink, and the chameleon. Of all those that move along the ground, these are the unclean for you. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean till evening. When one of them dies and falls on something, that article, whatever it is, use will be unclean. Whatever it is made of wool, cloth, hide, sackcloth, but in water it will be unclean to evening, and then it will be unclean. It will be clean. If one of them falls into the clay pot, everything in it will be unclean, and you will break the pot. Any food you are allowed to eat that has come into contact with water from any such pot is unclean, and any liquid that is drunk from such as pot is unclean. Anything that one of their carcasses fall on becomes unclean. An oven or cooking pot must be broken up. They are unclean, and you are to regard them as unclean. Spring, however, or a cistern for collecting water remains clean, but anyone who touches one of these carcasses is unclean. If a carcass fall on any seeds that are to be planted, they remain clean. But if water has been put on the seed and a carcass fall on it, it is unclean for you. If an animal that you are allowed to eat dies, anyone who touches its carcass will be unclean until evening. Anyone who eats some of its carcass must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up the carcass must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean until evening. Any creature that moves along the ground is to be regarded as unclean. It is not to be eaten. You are not to eat any creature that moves along the ground, whether it moves on its belly or walks on the floors or many feet. It is unclean. Do not defile yourselves by any of these creatures. Do not make yourselves unclean by means of them, or be made unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. Do not make yourself unclean by any creature that moves along the ground. I am the Lord who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore, be holy, because I am holy. These are the regulations concerning animals, birds, and everything that moves about in the water, and every creature that moves along the ground. You must distinguish between the clean and unclean, between living creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. Oh, that was serious. Let's get into some of this. Let's see what is going on with this. Well, Leviticus is a pivotal chapter in the Torah that outlines the dietary laws given to the Israelites, distinguishing between clean and unclean animals. Here's a breakdown of its structure and deeper significance. Land animals. Clean must have split hooves and chew the cud, meaning cattle and sheep. Unclean animals that meet only the criterion, e.g. camel, hare, and pig. Aquatic creatures. Clean must have fins and scales. Unclean are shellfish, eels, and other scaleless sea life. So we've been eating unclean things. Birds. A list of unclean birds is given. Eagle, vulture, and raven. These are often scavengers or predators. Clean locusts, crickets, and grasshoppers. Unclean all other flying insects with 4 legs. Carcasses. Contamination. Touching dead unclean animals renders one impure until evening. Vessels and food contaminated by carcasses must be destroyed. Creeping things. All crawling creatures, mice, lizards, are unclean. Conclusion and purpose. Holiness is the central theme. Be holy, for I am holy. These laws are meant to distinguish between clean and unclean, reinforcing Israel's identity and spiritual discipline. Holiness through separation. The dietary laws are not just about health. They symbolize moral and spiritual discernment. Choosing what to consume becomes a metaphor for choosing what to internalize spiritually. Decay and filth. Many unclean animals are associated with scavenging, decay, or ambiguous boundaries, such as water dwellers without scales. These reflect spiritual contamination or moral ambiguity. Governance of the body. The body becomes a temple, and what in it must align with the divine order. This echoes interest in spiritual governance and ritual discipline. Animal symbolism. Each creature carries archetypal weight. The pig, for instance, is ritually unclean despite its cloven hoof, symbolizing deceptive appearances or incomplete transformation. This was a lot. I'm going to get into some more. It looks like, but remember, these things were before Christ, because I believe now we are allowed to eat. I believe now we are allowed to eat not everything, but most of these things, I believe, as long as you bless it first. But we are going to get into this, because this is a spiritual, not just a spiritual thing, but it is also, it's a natural but a spiritual thing. These laws seem to have been intended as a test of the people's obedience, right? As Adam was forbidden to eat of the tree of knowledge and to teach them of self-denial and the government of their appetites, to keep the Israelites distinct from other nations as well. Many also of these forbidden animals were objects of superstition and idolatry to the heathen. And most times in witchcraft, they use all or opposite, but they like unclean things. That's why it's clean and unclean, because the kingdom is clean and holy, and Satan's kingdom is considered to be unclean and defiled. And you'll see why, because they use a lot of disgusting stuff. The people were taught to make distinctions between the holy and unholy in their companions and intimate connections, right? Also, these objects were superstition and of idolatry to the heathen. The law forbade not only the eating of the unclean beasts, but the touching of them. So remember, this is also humans, companions, and intimate, because there were certain ones God told them not to deal with as well. I know the Canaanites was one. Those who would be kept from any sin must be careful to avoid all temptations to it or coming near it. God don't tempt us, we tempt ourselves. That's why we have to live separately because of these reasons. If not, we'll be falling into sin, because usually you influence people or they influence you. The exceptions are very minute and are all designed to call forth constant care and exactness in their obedience and teach us to obey. Whilst we enjoy our Christian liberty and are free from such burdensome of observances, we must be careful not to abuse our liberty. For the Lord hath redeemed and called his people that they may be holy, even as he is holy. We must come out and be separate from the world. We must leave the company of the ungodly and all the needless connections with those who are dead in Christ or in sin. We must be zealous of good works, devoted to followers of God and companions of his people. Now, this is what I was wondering about too, but we're gonna talk about it once I get done. This chapter treats of creatures clean and unclean as fit or not fit to be eaten, and first of the beasts whose signs are given. Then was the fishes, which are likewise described, and after that the fowls, and those are not to be particularly named. Next of the creeping things, which are distinguished into two sorts of flying creeping things, of which those are unclean. Then their carcasses are not even to be touched, as neither the carcasses of the unclean beasts, and the creeping things on the earth, which defile by touching as well as eating and making everything unclean, upon which being dead they fall, and under these laws that were enforced from the holiness and goodness of God. And of this chapter is concluded with a recapitulation of them. So this is how God set his people apart. And we're going to get into some of these notes. From the laws concerning the priests, now comes to those which belong to all the people. God spoke to both of them because cognizance of the following matters belong to both, meaning the priests as well as the people. So he was directing the people about the things forbidden or not allowed, and the ones that were allowed. Were any doubt or any difficulty, so no confusion, and the magistrate was to see the direction was followed. These are the beasts, though they are very be of good and pure in itself, yet it pleased God to make a distinguished difference between clean and unclean, which he did in part before the flood. But more fully, here are many reasons. One, to assert his own sovereignty over man, especially his chosen people, and all the creatures which men may not use but with God's leave. To keep up the wall of partition between the Jews and other nations, which was very necessary for a great many and wise purposes, to keep them separated from other nations, other people. That by bridging their appetite in things in themselves, right, keeping them from being too worldly. And some of them very desirable, they might be better prepared and enabled to deny themselves in these things, simply and grossly sinful, right? So, for the preservation of their health as well, and of the creatures, forbidding being though used by the neighbor nations. Because remember, a lot of these other nations use these creatures not only as food, but also, even though they was considered unclean with God, but also for rituals, for sacrifices, and idolatry worship, a lot of them. And of wholesome nourishment, especially to the Jews who were very obnoxious to leprosy. So that's why it was also to keep their diet from keeping them from being sickly, to teach them about that filthiness and all those that ill qualities for which some of these creatures are noted. Yeah, some of them are really disgusting. Cloven footed, that is, the divided into two parts only. This clause is added to explain and limit the former, as appears from Leviticus 11:26. For the feet of dogs and cats are parted or cloven into many parts, and cheweth the cud, but bringeth up the cud, that is, the meat once chewed out of the stomach into the mouth again, and that it may be chewed a second time for better concoction. This branch is to be joined with the former, both properties being necessary for the allowed beast, but the reason hereof must be resolved into the will of the Lord. Giver, though interpreters guess that God will hereby signify their duties by the first, that discerning between good and evil by the latter. that duty, recalling God's word on our minds to be meditating upon it. So these are the animals that are unclean. They are of the kingdom of darkness, or they're used in those ways, or the idolatry way. And this is why. And for the purpose of their health. So, and to keep them with a better balanced diet so that they don't eat things that would make them sickly, you know. So the camel and the usual food, Arabia yielding bad nourishment, divided not the hoof, so as to have his foot cloven in two, being expressed, it is here understood. Otherwise, the camel's hoof is divided, but is but a small and imperfect division. For the names of the following creatures, seeing the Jews themselves are uncertain and divided about them, it seems improper to trouble the unlearned readers with disputes about them, so not to confuse people. Shall not touch, not in order to eat or touch, be gathered by comparison with this. But since the fat and the skins of some forbidden creatures were useful, yes, and for medicinal purposes and other good purposes, they were used by good men, it is probable that God would have let them cast them away. But thus God forbade the making of images, not universally, but in order to the worship of them, as Christian interpreters agree. So remember, we're not supposed to make graven images either. So this was another one. Fins and scales, both of them, such as fishes, being more cleanly and more wholesome food than others. The names of them are not particularly mentioned, partly because most of them wanted names, the fish not being brought to Adam and named by him as other creatures were, and partly because the land of Canaan had not many rivers nor great stores of fish. Remember, Canaan was Cain's son, and that was because he was marked cursed, and they were not allowed to. He was considered unclean. So this clause is added to show that they were neither abominable in their own nature, nor for the food of other nations, and consequently, when the partition war between Jews and Gentiles was taken away, these distinctions of meat were to cease. So once Christ came, a lot of these things changed, but at this time, this was like their kosher diet that they eat. And this is what this was about. Among the fowls, the true signification of the following Hebrew words is now lost, as the Jews at this day confess, which not falling out of with God, without God's singular providence, may intimate the cessation of this law. The exact observation whereof Christ came is become impossible. Yeah, because when Christ came, a lot of this was, In general, this may be observed that the fowls forbidden diet are either ravenous and cruel, right? Or such like scavengers as delight at the night to manifest to teach them darkness to feed upon impure things, right? And so signification of these prohibition is manifest to teach them men to abominate all cruelty or oppression and all works of darkness and filthiness. The ossifrage and the osprey, two particular kinds of eagles, distinct from that which being the chief of his kind is called by the name of the whole kind. After this whole kind, according to the several kinds, known by this general name, which includes besides ravens, properly so-called crows, rooks, pies, and others, yet they tend to feast on dead things, I believe. And all fowls, flying things that crawl or creep upon the earth, and so degenerate from their proper nature, and are of a mongrel kind, which may intimate that apostasies and mongrels in religion are abominable in the sight of God. Upon all four, upon four legs, upon more than four, which is all one in the present purpose. So the locusts, though unusual in food, were commonly eaten by the Ethiopians, Libyans, Parthians, and other Eastern people bordering upon Jews. And as it is certain the Eastern locusts were much larger than ours, so it's probable they were of a different qualities and yielding better nourishment. All other, that is, which have not those legs above and besides their feet mentioned, are unclean, and such were excluded from the court of God's house and from free conversation with other men. Beareth or take away out of the place where it may lie, by which others may be either offended or polluted. Upon his paws, upon his hands, that is, which have feet divided into several parts like fingers, as dogs, cats, apes, and bears. That on which such water cometh, the flesh or herbs, or other food which is dressed in water in a vessel so polluted shall be unclean. Not so, if it is to be food when it is eaten dry as bread or fruits. The reason of which difference seems to be this, that the water did sooner receive pollution in itself and convey it to the food so dressed, right? So that's if the water was contaminated and then so that's why. So of this no reason can be given but the will of the lawgiver and his merciful condensation to men's necessities, water being scarce in those countries, and for the same reason God would have the ceremonial law of sacrifices give place to the law of mercy. Seed, partly because this was necessary provision for man, and partly because such seed would not be used for man's food till it had received many alterations in the earthly, whereby such pollution was taken away. So that's once it went into the ground. Any water, the reason of difference is because wet seed doth sooner receive and longer retain any pollution, and partly because such seed was not fit to be sown presently, and therefore that necessity with justified the use of the dry seed could not be pretended in this case. Any beast died either of itself or being killed by some wild beast, in which cases the blood was not poured forth, as it was when they were killed by men, either for food or sacrifice, which we know blood was already not something that they were able to eat. He that eateth unwittingly, for if he did it knowingly, it was presumptuous sin against an express law. Deuteronomy 14:21, and therefore punished with cutting off. So we see how God was doing with the obedience in the last verse. That cutting off, being disobedient, is something you don't know what to expect. Every creeping thing except those expressly accepted in Leviticus 11:29, upon the belly as worms and snakes, upon all fours as toads and divers serpents. So ye shall be holy. By this he gives them to understand that all these cautions about eating and touching these creatures was not for any real uncleanliness in them, but only that by diligent observation of these rules that they might learn with the greater care to avoid all moral pollutions and to keep themselves from all filthiness of flesh and spirit, and from all familiar and intimate converse with notorious sinners. Yeah, because a lot of these things they were worshiping, and a lot of these things that was considered idolatry, they was using them as deities, and they was bowing down, giving them, sacrifices. That bringeth you out of Egypt. This was a reason why they should cheerfully submit to distinguishing laws, who have been so honored with distinguishing favors. Because this is the law, it was so as long as the Mosaic dispensation lasted. But under the gospel, we find it expressly repealed by a voice from heaven. Let us therefore bless God, that to us every creature of God is good and nothing to be refused. Well, we look at that now, but we still know that a lot of those things are scavengers, and they do tend to eat up on flesh and different things, carcasses, and that's probably how you probably. And then when we think about it, the world has made what was considered unclean delicacies here. When you look at the seafood, everyone loves the seafood, and basically they're the bugs of the unclean things. And they've made it a delicacy, and you pay so much more for it. So you see how what God says is clean, man says is unclean. I mean, I know now that we bless it, but still, I mean, when you just think about what they eat and then we eating it, it does make a lot of sense. I think that it also, the way it's prepared, sometimes it tends to have people with high cholesterol or salt levels as well. But when we think about all of these things, it just makes a lot of a difference, especially after the last chapter that we just read, where he distinguishes a lot of different things, and it was because of disobedience that they died. So people might want to get these things right, I would say. But anyway, so, because I had always wanted to know the clean and the unclean, but hold on. You're going to find out the meaning. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna figure out. And basically, it's dietary restrictions, boundaries between purity and chaos. This is a spiritual as well as natural, as far as health is concerned, matter. The core established taxonomy of creatures, meaning clean versus unclean. This is also with people, because there's a lot of people that ate those things and they were considered, because they weren't a part of God's special people. So it was for health, it was for holiness, it was distinctiveness, distinguishing clean and not clean, or those of the kingdom of God and those of the kingdom of darkness. So it's governance, it's giving order, it's setting rules, boundaries, separating life from darkness, sacred, profane from life and death, meaning you eat lively things, and then you eat things that are not clean, which are defiled, which is considered to be death. Clean animals, those that, symbolizes internal and external alignment with God, rumination and groundedness. So those are the things that have life even after death, and they give life back. Unclean animals often blur these categories, and that's why they represent disorder, immorality, ambiguity, or spiritual contamination or uncleanliness. They also tend to be, bad for your health. And it's a mental and spiritual thing, meaning cleanliness and uncleanness. This echoes when God orders creation by separation. Eating becomes a ritual act of participating in divine structure, meaning of things that are. So each category of animals carries the weight. Swine, though it has split hood, it doesn't chew cud, symbolizing hypocrisy or incomplete transformation. Shellfish and scalefish, they dwell in depths but lack protective boundaries, evoking hiddenness, vulnerability, or spiritual opacity. Birds of prey, they feed on death, right? Representing spiritual predation or unclean appetite. So this is also to the moral immoral for their appetites. So we see the clear distinction in the spiritual and natural of that. And the creeping things low to the ground, often associated with decay, filth, and the curse of the serpent, right? So these creatures mirror spiritual conditions, meaning gluttony, we know that's overeating, decay, deception, and or rebellion. That's why this is God's giving them the divine order. Purity, contamination, and spiritual warfare. So touching a carcass renders one impure until evening. This isn't just a hygiene, it's a metaphor for spiritual contagion, meaning contamination within your spirit. Death in biblical thought is the ultimate impurity linked to sin, exile, and separation from God. This is not just in the natural, it is also mainly in the spiritual. Vessels contaminated must be broken. This is why they had to separate people when they were sick with certain diseases, because they was considered clean and unclean. Vessels that were contaminated must be broken suggests that spiritual defilement can't always be cleansed. Sometimes destruction precedes renewal. We see that when God is cleansing his people, he tends to break them, and then he takes everything out so he can clean it, put it back. Evening as a reset. Impurity fails with time, pointing to cycles of grace and restoration. This aligns with spiritual warfare, guarding gates, which is your mouth, your hands, your eyes, against infiltration by unclean influences. And when we look at these things, we see a lot of that going on in the world. Essential dimensions, discernment. The laws train the soul to distinguish not just food, but truth from deception, and sacred from profane. So sacred, clean from unclean. And that's in the spiritual and the natural from people, places, and things. Governance of appetite. Eating becomes a spiritual discipline, right? And when you overeat, you undereat, whatever. It's a form of priestly alignment. So it's discipline. That's why we fast, to kill and to stop the the urge to eat. That's what that's about, to suppress that and to get it in check. So karmic resonance. Clean animals reflect harmony with divine frequency. Unclean ones disrupt them. So this is separating base elements from noble ones, refining the soul through symbolic fire. I was talking about how this resonates with the laws that were reinterpreted in the New Testament, and how they resonate with tradition. See, because everyone has a different, stuff like Kabbalah, the Ethiopians. Everyone eats different diets. When you look around the world, people eat different things, and some of them do eat these things. And I know the law was, kind of taken away. You can basically bless it, but I would look at those things still to this day. I do like seafood, but those other things, it's like, who want to eat a monkey? I mean, it's just certain things. It's like, I don't know. Cannibalistic. It's like, I don't know. But anyway, this explains a lot. We might want to follow these instructions when it comes to especially our health. We see now that when it comes to our food, especially nowadays, it is not, because when the ground was cursed with Adam and Eve, it was cursed. So along with it and the animals was cursed. So it's a lot of stuff that goes on. And then what the people put in the food and in the ground, and they're destroying everything. You see how it's deteriorating. You got certain species are dying out of plant life, of everything, because they're doing what they're doing, playing God, creating all these different type of non-food foods, and all this other stuff that they're doing to it to contaminate it. So it just doesn't help us at all. And then they're killing off the soil, so we're not able to grow our own food. And that's another thing that's just really ridiculous, because growing your own food is an important thing, not just for the earth and the animals, but for us as well. It's like the cycle. They're interrupting the natural cycle and order of life that God created for us, which is a disruption, which is not good. That's why we see the ecosystem is doing craziness. One minute it's hot, next minute it's cold. We find it hot and cold in areas where it shouldn't be now, or longer periods of time. They call it global warming. It is not. They're trying to do that carbon imprint, which they're going to start charging people for oxygen and carbon for you to actually breathe the air that God gave us and breathe for free. So these are things that we have to be paying attention to, but we do want to eat healthy. If you can find, it is costly and expensive, and it's a shame, because God gave us this earth for us to eat, everything, and not pay for it and grow it ourselves, but because certain people, places, and things, we talk about the kingdom of darkness, they want us to eat what they want us to eat, or not eat at all, because they want to be in control and have power enough to starve us. And we're going to see later on down, the line, when it comes to we're getting closer and closer to the end times, how this is going to play a big part, because Monsanto and all these people are buying up all the land. You got Vanguard and BlackRock between the land and properties. No one's going to own anything. They're going to have to go to them. But these is why we need to be paying attention to the end times. Growing our own food, having our own property would be most ideal, because when you own your own land and your own home, you can usually farm your own stuff. Don't get me wrong, the cookie cutter homes that they're building, the subdivisions are beautiful, but it takes away from you being able to have your own land, be separated from your neighbor, and being able to plant your own food. So they've taken the land and they put in all these houses, and they got them in these little small lots, and people can't really grow. I mean, you can if it's a small amount, but it's just, you see what I'm saying? And a lot of them have HOAs and other things, and they stop you from doing what you want to do with it. So it does get to be a hassle. But anyway, don't want to make this video too long. That's why getting with your family and living like the Amish. I see that they were talking about all this Amish stuff of living natural, holistic. I myself have been changing my diet because of my health issues and getting older, trying to eat better, and with the juicing and choosing a better diet, and trying to get in a little bit more exercise, even if it's just walking. These things will help. But when it comes to this as well, it talks about the spiritual and the mental as far as physical, dealing with people. So that's also separating them from the clean and unclean people, who are people who are not saved, or people that God considered to be people that they should not marry, should not intermingle with. And we see a lot of them doing that, even though he specifically told them not to. So that was another, and there's a reason for that, because they come with curses and they have their idol worships. They were into a lot of other stuff, and this is why. And God knew that they were of the unclean thing. He didn't want to mix the two, the clean and the unclean together, because one drop of uncleanliness is pollute the whole bunch, one bad apple. So it's just like, It's the same, situation. And when it comes to us and living our lives here, when it comes to being around people, and even when it comes to, being around people, knowing that, folks are not saved or they're not living for the Lord, we want to, you don't have to avoid, you got to live here. You got to love people, but you don't have to necessarily be around them doing the things that they're doing or knowing that they're doing these things and being around them, because that's not going to help them get saved unless it's something that they want to do. But anyway, we are bruised and not broken. I hope you like this video. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. I've been trying to get it out. And I'm going to be going on vacation, and my birthday is coming, 46. I got another grandbaby here, so I got some things going on. So I got, 2-3 grands now, boys. So things have been really good in my life. Getting older, and life is just lifing. But anyway, I'm supposed to be going on vacation life. I'm just trying to go on vacation and get it together. I need to relax. I don't know if I'm going to do any videos while I'm on vacation. I got things to do while I'm on vacation. I don't know, but this may be, I don't know yet. I'm not sure. I got to see. But we'll see how it goes. But I love you guys. We're bruised and not broken. Like I said, this was a really good one. It really broke down the food and the diet, spiritual, natural situations. And till the next video, like I said, not sure if I'm going to put any more out for a minute. I may not. But anyway, bruised and not broken. Love you guys. And until the next video later. God bless you. Like, share, comment, and subscribe.